to Transcendental Transformation, the place where spirituality and transformation unite. Host Miss Raina imparts truth so that you can break through your limiting beliefs and evolve into a deeper consciousness. As you go about your day, remember, before every breakthrough, there is a breakdown. And now, let's start the show.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of Transcendental Transformation. I'm your host, Miss Raina, and today is Tuesday, December 15th, 2020. As always, we're coming live from the Sirius Star System studios right here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and I hope all is well with everybody. So, I cannot believe how fast this month is going by because the year is almost over. I know there's a lot of chaos that's been going on this year, if that's your perception, but it went by very fast for me, and we've all been dealing with a lot of stuff, but you know what, hey, 2020 was a great and wonderful year if you use the time wisely, and 2021 is going to be the same, but I guess it's really our perception of how we view ourselves and the world. So anyways, this Saturday we are coming up with another clothes drive for the homeless and families in need. So if you have anything to donate, shoes, blankets, clothes, backpack, you name it, you know the spiel. Please contact us at Spirit Communities on Facebook, and Caleb and I will reach out to you, or you can donate at our GoFundMe, and the link is at Spirit Communities on our Facebook page as well. So all right, guys, I am going to be, or we are going to be, not me, it's not a one-person show anymore, so we are going to be taking about 2 weeks off. I think we're coming back on January 5th. This will be our last show and our last sessions. This Saturday will be the last sessions for 2 weeks. I will be going to Chicago to visit my family and spend time with them, and freeze. I'm already cold. I got to be honest with you. I am sitting here just before we got the show. I was sitting here in my sweater and everything. I was cold, and I'm not looking forward to 20 degree weather and snowy and icy, but hey, we do what we do for our family, right? So, as always, guys, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Periscope, and Daily Motion. Apparently, we just got the notification that Periscope will be no more after March 31st of 2021. So, I think it's moving to Twitter. And so, we will give you all the update links and everything soon to that. But Caleb will not be with us today. He's got some stuff going on, so he will not be answering questions. So, if you do have any questions, hit me up on Facebook or Twitch, because that's the only ones that I can answer while we're doing the live show. And as always, the replays will be at the link at the bottom. So, all right, guys, let's get into tonight's show, because we have a lot to talk about today. We are going to be talking about a topic that is a very, very major topic, and we've discussed this topic many times over the years, and this is something that I've personally had many years of experience with, along with many people, and with what's going on with the world and COVID and all this stuff, it's happening to a lot more people than normal, because tonight we are going to talk about the struggles of depression, and depression is something that affects all of us. I've especially in today's world, I don't know anybody that I haven't run across that said, no, I've never been depressed ever. And maybe when you're a child, maybe that I've never met anyone that's never had any bout of depression, and that's actually quite normal, because it's basically what we all go through in order for it. And we're gonna go into many different ways. Tonight is going to be a little different, because tonight we're going to have like a discussion. I'm going to go over a little bit of the clinical stuff, kind of the signs, symptoms, everything like that. But then we're going to go into some stories and just talk about it. So if you're watching today and you're going on and you're listening and everything, I want you guys to kind of understand what if you guys have anything to say, add and stuff, please hit me up, because it's going to be something that we have that we're going to be discussing today. So depression is, by definition, is a common and a serious mood disorder by psychological understandings, and I really don't like. I really don't like the word disorder, and I'll tell you the reason why is because whenever we say we have a disorder, or we have, I like to use the word challenge, because whenever we use certain words, I feel like it puts a handicap on us, and it also puts a handicap on our mental capabilities, because when we hear certain words, it's like, oh my God, it's the end of the world. And I know that recently I had a couple of friends that have been having health issues, and several of them were going through something similar at the same time, and it was just funny, because the word, once they were diagnosed with a certain word, it was like the end of the world to them, because these words have very powerful meanings to us. And so what ends up happening is that we end up going into this idea that we are constricted to a disorder, we are constricted to some type of disability. That means that we can never grow and we can never reaccomplish anything, because when we're classified as something, especially they say depression a lot of times is incurable. Well, I'm living proof, and there's lots of people out there that have gone through depression, clinical depression, bipolar, all sorts of different things, and I know, and we'll get into that in a second, but we're proof that you can work through your issues, and you can resolve your mood disorders and your mood challenges, I say, and you can resolve your depression. So there's a lot of people I know, and trust me, I get it. There's a lot of you that are going to probably fight me on some of the things I'm going to say today, but I've been there with you, and I want you guys to understand that I've been there with you, as like what you guys are going through. I've been to where I didn't want to open up the shade for days, weeks on end. So I didn't want to work. I just laid on the couch all day. I don't think I showered for very many times. Suicide attempts, many of them. So I get it. I really, really do. And I want you guys to understand that going into today's show, because I don't want you to think that I'm, that I haven't gone through it. The reason why I discuss certain topics is because I have gone through it. And one of the reasons why depression is one of those topics that I constantly bring up is because depression is a big topic, and that's one of the main challenges, mood challenges, that I help people with, and that I've gone through myself, and that I deal with people on a daily basis. And especially right now, the holidays are coming up. There's a lot of single people out there, and I know that mindset starts ticking. Oh, well, I don't have family, I don't have friends, I don't have whatever, maybe a boyfriend, a girlfriend. And so we look at this idea, and all of a sudden our mental mindset starts to put us into a depression based on our perception in life. But basically, in short terms, depression is basically categorized by severe symptoms that affect how we think and feel, how they affect our daily actions. And like I was just saying, where we don't want to go out, we don't want to be able to do stuff, and we don't want to have friends, sociable, and all sorts of things. And it affects our sleeping and eating. I know when I'm going through, I know when I went through some major moods, and I was really depressed, and I felt like it was the end of the world. I didn't sleep, and then that triggered another type of chain of events, because when you don't sleep and you're already moody and you're already depressed and you're having all this stuff, you get even more moodier, and then you start not thinking properly, because it affects your mind, the lack of sleep. And so this is a whole chain of events that happens. And of course, who wants to work? Who wants to even think about working? We lose our jobs, we lose our friends, we lose our family, we lose our relationships, because there's just so much on our mind, and it's due to a limited perception of how we perceive ourselves in our life. And we're going to get into that in the stories and everything like that. One of the things that I really do want to touch over really quickly is the different types of depression. And there's persistent depressive disorder. There's postpartum depression for you mothers. I know there was a couple interviews that I did the last couple of weeks before this show, and there were several moms that expressed this. Postpartum is a very real depression, and it happens and it's common. There's also psychotic depression and seasonal affective disorder, and that is one that a lot of people go through, depending on, especially now and up north. I know my mom is already starting to talk about it. She's like, oh, it's winter time. I sit in this house all by myself, and there's nothing to do. There's nowhere to go. I can't go outside and enjoy the thing, and that seasonal effect, being that cabin fever, starts to affect us. And honestly, that's one of the reasons why I love living down here in Fort Lauderdale, is because I get to go out every single day, even if it rains. Even if it's cold for us. Yeah, it's never too cold where you still can't go out. And that's one of the things that we have to look at when it comes to those type of things. Seasons do affect us. Even in TCM, our geographical locations and our seasons affect us. So they've done studies where even people who are in hotter climates are more aggressive because of the heat and everything. They're more aggressive. They're more impatient. They're more faster go type people. People in colder areas are more reserved, more slower, those type of ideas. And depending on where you're at, location and the season, the time, everything, this can very well affect us. I noticed I mentioned bipolar earlier, and I know bipolar is different than depression, but a lot of times it's categorized as with depression. And the reason why is because when you're experiencing a bipolar episode, what ends up happening is you go from extreme high to extreme lows. And during those lows, when you're having those extreme lows, or even in bipolar too, you're still meeting those criteria for major depression. And so when you're at that low, you're in that depressive mode, you're in the same mindset as someone who's clinically depressed or has any of those above mentioned disorders, or I should say challenges. And so that's why they call it bipolar depression. And that's the reason why a lot of times even though bipolar isn't classified as a depression, you'll often see it in psychological or psychology that a lot of times it's linked in with each other. So that's one of the things that and even I've gone through bipolar depression. That was very tough for me, but again, we've done it. So what are some of the signs and symptoms that we experience when we're going through depression? Well, we experience hopelessness, right? A lot of people who have experienced this idea of depression have experienced hopelessness, and especially pessimism, because why? When we're hopeless, we don't have a great outlook as far as our present and a future. And I know there's no such thing as a future, but you know what I mean. So we have a lot of pessimism. There's a lot of guilt for those people who are in depression. And this is something that often causes depression. This is often a leading cause to depression, because we've all had experiences. And I really want to drive this home for you people, because this is something that you have to resolve if you're really willing to resolve your depression and get through your depression, is resolving guilt. Look, I want to be honest with you. Everybody has done something that's not so nice. Everybody has been the bad guy in somebody's story. Everybody has made choices that has not been favorable to our lives and may have hurt somebody. We may have lied. We may have stolen. We may have done something. And that's part of learning. And we have to learn to accept that. We have to learn to be able to understand that, and understand that we are not meant to be perfect beings. We are here to learn, and we are here to grow. And in order for us to learn and grow, we have to be able to acknowledge the things that we do. And so when it comes to depression, guilt is one of the major symptoms and major contributors to our depression. Because think about it. Why are a lot of times we guilty? Why are a lot of times we have depression? Is because we are guilty, or we feel guilty about things we've done. I know even at my age, there was times before I resolved a lot of my stuff that I would think about things I've done in high school or grade school, and I just put my head on my hand and be like, oh, I can't believe I did that. Why did I do that? And I would beat myself up. And then all of a sudden I'd start judging myself, and I'd start looking at life, and I'd start saying, well, I must not be a good person, because if I'm doing this stuff, or if I did this stuff, what does that say about me? We all do things. There's not a perfect person in this world. There's not a perfect soul in this world that hasn't done something, that has lied to somebody, that has manipulated somebody, that has hurt somebody, and that's one of the things that we have to look at. And that guilt leads us to worthlessness. When we have hopelessness, when we're pessimistic about who we are, what's going on in our life, and we have all this guilt, well, that leads to low self-esteem. That leads to our self-worth being diminished. It's basically like a bombshell going off, where it's gone. It just blows up, because we look at ourselves, and I mean, how can we feel worth something if we're looking at the past and we're feeling guilty about things we've done, or we feel guilty about things that have been done to us? And we feel hopeless about who we are and where the direction of life is going. I know many people in this world right now are going through this idea where, like let's take 2020. How many of you are being pessimistic about how 2020 was? How you saw hopelessness because of a virus that had about a 96-97% survival rate, and more people die of the regular flu each year than this thing, and yet we're going crazy over it. So it doesn't make sense. But because of where we're at mentally, we focus on those ideas, and we focus on the hopelessness. And so 2020, for a lot of people who are pessimistic, and a lot of people who have low self-esteem and these ideas, focus on, oh my God, this is such a terrible year. But for me and a lot of people who took it and said, hey, this is a year of letting go and understanding and working on ourselves, we dove right in, and that's what we did. And so we weren't hopeless about it. We didn't see 2020 as a year of shame and out to get us, and things to be guilty about. Life is life, and things are happening. But you know what? I have no control over that. So I do have control over the way I feel, the way I'm going to treat myself, the way I'm going to respond to things. Those are things we have control about. And people who are depressive don't understand that. They haven't made that connection, because I get it. When I was depressed, I didn't make that connection either. I was like, oh, because my emotions seemed to control me. And that was part of me mastering what my emotions were really about, and realizing that they weren't real, that there was just this energy based on how I was reading data through my experiences. And once I understood that at a soul level, I realized, hey, this is in my control. This is everything I do is totally in my control. And so this idea of depression is just this idea that I'm creating for myself, because I perceive life to be one way and I want it to be a certain way. And so I ended up using depression to boost my life, and when I started having depression for years, I started diving into it. And I know, because a lot of you want to get out of it. You want to jump right out of it and say, get me out of here. But I actually used to dive right into my depression. The moment I started feeling it, I said, okay, everybody, I'm taking a break. I would shut down my social medias, turn off my phone, and for however long it took, a week, 2 days, 2 weeks, a month, and I would just sit there and I would say, okay, I'm depressed. Why am I depressed? What's going on? And I would acknowledge these feelings. I would acknowledge what's going on. And that's one of the things that we don't do. We don't acknowledge. We want to fight our depression. And we're going to get into why going towards the depression and acknowledging it and going into it is actually healthier for you than trying to run away from it and beating yourself up. But when we're depressed, we get very irritable, don't we? And that's another major symptom. And I know that I need a break from life and people and everything that's going on, and even sometimes myself, when I start getting irritable. Sometimes I just wake up, I haven't slept well, I have things I have to work on, old emotions are coming up, old experiences that need to be that need to go into further understanding, and I start to be irritable. When people are irritable, it's not because people are annoying or people are this. You think it is. I get You think it is. You think that it's everyone else's problem, but it's really our problem. And our irritability tells us that we're not dealing with what we need to. And because that energy isn't being exercised, it starts to build up and build up, and we start to get antsy and we start to become irritable to the point where we usually explode on people and just go boom and explode and just let he double hockey sticks all over everybody, and then we feel guilty and hopeless and helpless about that we just hurt people, and it's this whole cycle all over again. All right, guys, we'll be right back after these messages from I Am Evolution.
The human experience is changing, and consciousness is evolving into something higher than any of us could ever imagine. As we transform into more sentient beings, a new world of connected consciousness is taking place. Welcome to I Am Evolution, the movement in human development that transforms the human experience into a deeper consciousness through perspective and duality. Are you ready to be a part of the next stage in human evolution? Call I Am Evolution today to schedule your appointment at 561-318-0006. That's 561-318-0006. Or email us at iamevolution@protonmail.com.
All right, everybody, we are back. If you're just joining us, we are talking about the struggle of depression, and we are just going over some of the basic signs and symptoms. And you know that some of the other things that we go through are decrease of energy, fatigue, loss of interest, of pleasure, hobbies, work relationships, life in general. It is really hard for us to feel happy about life and to want to live life when we're depressed. It's a really tricky situation. And so that is one of the reasons why I wanted to have a discussion about depression, because yes, it is seasonal. It is a lot of northerners, a lot of people who are stuck in their homes. The holidays are coming around. We're going through, for many of you, you viewed this past year as a really terrible year. And so it's really all about perception. So one of the things that I really do want to discuss really quick before we get into the discussion is some of the triggers. And this is something that when we have depression, it's like anything. It's the same thing that I deal with my past trauma, my DID, any of the, like, depression has triggers. Most of our challenges have triggers. And this is something that we really have to take time to figure out what it is that triggers us into those ideas. So when I was working through my dissociative identity disorder and I was dealing with this stuff, I would have triggers that would cause me to switch. When I was dealing with depression, bipolar, whatever, my anxiety, large crowds, I had to sit and pick apart and really put on everything that caused my triggers, because we know that grief is a trigger. We know past trauma is a trigger. We know the things that happened to us, which is past trauma, that we don't want to deal with. And this is the hard part, because whether it's a toxic relationship or your finances or past trauma, a lot of times the reason why we become depressed is because we're not dealing with the situation at hand. In order for us to resolve our depression, we have to deal with our issues. In order for me to have gone over depression, anxiety, PTSD, bipolar, I had to sit there and face my issues, and I worked really hard on them, and I faced them. I cried and cried for days, months on end, where it was just dripping, and I faced it because I knew I was strong enough, even though sometimes it didn't feel like it. It felt like my whole world was crashing down. It is hurtful and painful, but when you become on those other sides, those triggers aren't so terrible anymore. Because now I can watch a movie and it doesn't trigger me. I can go into some crowds. Crowds are still a little bit rough for me just because there's so much energy. But I know, and we haven't had much crowd dealing with. But crowds, I when I do go out, I'm more sociable now. I'm more talkative. Before I used to just go in someplace. Even when I used to go out to the kava bars, I used to go right to the bar, put on my headphones, get on my computer, and hey, I was out, but I didn't want to be out, and it was the same way no matter where I went. Now I'm talking to people, going out, because who I am is being released. That open inside is coming. And all those things that used to make me want to hide from the world are no longer there. Those triggers are no longer there. And, and the need for drugs, the need for drinking and smoking, those things, yes, those things bring around about harsher depression, harsher that, because it messes with the chemicals in the brain, especially with dopamine and serotonin. It's like, depending on what drug you're using, even smoking and alcohol, depending on what you're doing, it's a depletion of your serotonin and your dopamine, because you're being spiked so much, and then you come crashing down. And how do you not get depressed? I know people, when I was in the party scene, I know people that used to party all the time, and even me, we'd go out partying, and even if I was happy as it can be, the next 2 days, man, I was down for the count because I was depleted in everything. And what does that really do for our thing? But one of the things that we have to remember when we're talking about depression is that depression isn't like when we're working on this, because a lot of people ask me all the time, well, Miss Raina, what do I have to do to fix my depression? What do I have to do to get over it? Well, the answer is not a one size fits all. It comes in so many ways, so many shapes. And this is why working with someone either such as me or a therapist or a psychiatrist or a licensed mental health care worker or someone you trust, working with you have to have them and you have to understand that you have to figure out what works for you. And that's the hard part. And I get, because some of the things that I heard during many of these interviews on the phone, face to face, over the last couple of weeks for this depression, was that people don't want to go to therapy. They don't trust therapists. They don't trust the doctors. They don't trust this stuff. And I heard this over and over. Hey, they're going to lock me up. If I say the wrong thing, they're going to lock me up and throw away the key. And I get it. I felt the same way. But that is why you have to get that stigma out of your mind, because first of all, there is so much work involved in that. They just can't listen to you and then decide, oh, you're going to the psych ward, you're going to there's a process that they have to do. They just can't label you into that without legal ramifications for that. So but find somebody that you trust, or if you know somebody that goes see somebody, talk to your friends and say, hey, I know you go see somebody. Who are they? Are they open? Are they there? Are they ready to write scripts? Because trust me, I get it. When I first started therapy many years ago, and I still see a therapist just so I could have someone to talk to that understands what I'm doing in the world. And just sometimes we have normal conversations. And so it has to be able to do that. You have to be able to want to work with somebody. It's hard. I get it. You feel vulnerable, and vulnerability is something that is mentioned over and over. And I get it, because you don't want to share yourself because you've been hurt. A lot of people who have gone through depression, hey, I get it. You've been hurt so bad. You've been betrayed. You've had people walk all over you. You've had people lie, cheat, steal. We all have. There's not a person in this world that hasn't been lied to, that hasn't been cheated on, that hasn't been stolen on, that hasn't had something happen where some sense of betrayal. I get it. And some people may have even harder consequences. Hold on one second. We are getting a question here, and we're getting a question from Barb. And Barb, yes, depression is tied to anger, and that is a very good question. And we were about to get into that in a little bit. But yes, depression is tied to anger, because remember, we were talking about irritability. Well, what's irritability? A form of anger. And so depression is tied to anger, because remember, depression is energy that's unresolved. So it sits in us, and it doesn't move. And because energy has to move, remember, in order for us to be, why do they tell us to exercise? Because energy has to move. Our body has to move to be healthy. Energy is a constant thing of movement. And so what ends up happening is depression, because it's unresolved and stagnant energy and usually sinks down, eventually that energy has to start building itself up and working itself up in order for us to get it out. And so that's usually why depressed people are very quiet. They don't say anything. They just let it fester until they start getting irritated. Then they go off like a bomb. Boom. And I've done it. I know many people out there that do it constantly, that go off like a time bomb because they don't allow themselves to talk. You have to start talking about your challenges. You have to start talking about your past, your problems that are going on, and when you feel the anger coming out, allow it to come out. You don't have to explode all over people. You don't have to go crazy all over people. And I know sometimes it feels like it, but that's why I used to punch a Bob all the time before I got ill. That's the reason why I removed myself. Even sometimes, even with Caleb, we sit there and we talk, and sometimes I'm very irritable, or I used to be, and I used to get very irritable, and I would start feeling that because there was something that was coming up that I haven't dealt with. And so what I ended up doing was I started taking out on other people. People started annoying me, and I just get angry and really nasty with just no matter what it was. If I was driving, if I was at the store, just everybody aggravated me. And so on a daily basis, when things weren't resolved, I was always angry. Everything aggravated at me. Everything annoyed me. And that is something that ends up happening to us because it's unresolved. So yes, Barb, anger is most definitely linked to depression. And if you have anger coming out, it's because your body needs to vent it, and it's just like a volcano. Eventually, the energy builds up, and it has to go someplace. Otherwise we go boom, you know. So what happens to depression on a spiritual basis? So on a spiritual basis, when we really break down depression, what is it? Depression is a lack of understanding. I want you guys to think about this, and this is very important, and this will help you guys understand where you're at and help process the information that's going on as far as depression. It is a lack of understanding, remember how I talked earlier about perception and how we are perceiving things, and how like 2020, some people are so down about 2020 that we need to focus on good stuff now, and we need to focus on 2021 to bring us a better year. No, there was nothing wrong with 2020. It was our perception. It was our lack of understanding of what was going on, because we don't have an understanding of who we are, what we're dealing with, and how to process the information that we're going. And so on a spiritual basis, people who don't have that understanding start to go into that anger, start to go into that depression, because they feel victimized, because they're not seeing the truth of the situation. Life happens. Disease happens. Wars happen. Fighting happens. Healthy stuff happens. People recover. People survive. People help each other. I mean, hey, look at all that we did this year. Me and Caleb, Spirit Communities, our volunteers. We took a year that was supposed to be horrific in many minds, and we made the best of it. We kept growing the radio show. We kept reaching out to people. We kept reaching out to clients. We reached out to people in need, homeless, families, teenagers, all during this chaotic, horrible year. And you know what? This year wasn't a terrible year. But because we live in a world of good, bad, right, wrong, positive, negative, backwards, forwards, Miss Raina's 5 no-nos, we have a lack of understanding of what's going on. And that happens with all of our experience in past relationships, past trauma. Hey, you know what? I used to get beat up every single day. I suffered a lot of abuse as a child. And because I had a lack of understanding of those experiences, it created this idea of bipolar, depression, DID, and it ravaged me for many years. Once I took my time and I said, all right, Miss Raina, we really got to get this, because if I really want to fulfill what I have to do here, I need to understand who I am at the most fundamental level and basics that I have to start. And so what did I do? I stripped away everything, and I just took it and I said, all right, I'm angry. I'm depressed. I don't like people right now. And I started naming all my feelings. And then all of a sudden something would trigger and a memory would pop up. And I'd say, yeah, you know what? Remember when that person did that to me? And I allowed myself to be angry. I allowed myself to feel and experience that emotion. And then I allowed myself to cry. And this is hard, especially for you guys, because we are in a society where it's not manly to cry. And even women nowadays, women are being shunned for crying. The best thing you can do is to exercise those emotions. Because once I started crying, it was nonstop, but it was the best thing for me because it would just start triggering emotion after emotion, experience after experience. And I mourned the losses that I felt. I mourned those experiences that caused me pain because those experiences were there to teach me, but I had to let go of them. And in order for us to let go, we have to mourn, right? We have to grieve. We have to allow ourselves. When someone passes away, we don't just say, oh, forget it. They're gone now. Let's go on with our life. No, we don't do that unless we don't like them. But truth be told, when we lose someone we care about, what do we have to do in order to move on? We have to grieve. So why don't we do this for our emotions? Why don't we do this for our past trauma? Why don't we do this for our things that are bothering us? If these false ideas and these illusions are creating this stagnation of depression and bipolar, anger, irritability, hopelessness, worthlessness, self-esteem drop into the ground, then why don't we focus on that? And that's the trick, because we don't want to acknowledge. We think depression is bad. Depression is not bad. It is useful. It is a tool that is useful for us to evolve. When I said that I go into my depression, or I used to, and trust me, if depression ever comes back, and it will come back for me, because remember, everything has to keep that balance, or so to speak. And so when that does come back, it'll help me understand what's going on in my life. Okay, this is bothering me. Well, why is it bothering me? This is causing me. Okay, well, let's become depressed, to take time to rest and relax, and to dive into it, to understand it, to pick it apart, to look at it, and be like, all right, what is going on? This is my issue. This is my challenge. This is causing me this. Let's take it apart and see what it is. And then take one piece at a time and try to understand it. Don't try to overwhelm yourself with this idea and that idea. Take one piece at a time, because a lot of people have a hard time understanding that. They don't want to accept life for what it is. They don't want to accept the issue for what it is. And when I was talking to a lot of people through these through what's going on, to a lot of stuff with a lot of people, that was one of the hardest things. So they were like, well, this person did this to me. How many of us have said that? Somebody did this to me. And we look and we're like, well, yeah, that's true. Maybe someone walked up and punched you in the face. Yeah, that hurts. And that maybe someone lied to you. Maybe someone cheated on you. Maybe someone manipulated you. But you know what? The signs were there, people. I look back. Let's take an example. When I look back at my past relationships, every single one of my past relationships, except one, I've always been cheated on. And no, that's not why I don't date anymore. I don't date because I don't need to anymore. I'm fulfilled in my life. But when I look at my past relationships, and I used to be angry about them, and I used to be like, well, why should I date? Guys, girls, it doesn't matter. They all cheat on me. Well, the fact is I chose people that would do that to me. I chose that. The signs were there. Looking back at things, I saw these people weren't faithful. I saw them how they treated their past boyfriends or girlfriends. I saw them how they treated their friends. You want to know if someone's honest? Talk to people, and if they're lying to their friends and manipulating their friends, they're gonna do it to you. Even if they say, "Oh, honey, no, I'll never lie to you. Me and you are tight." And if they lie to their friends and they cheat on their friends and their boyfriends and girlfriends, they're gonna do it to you. And that's that's the name of the game. So it's not the fact that somebody did it to me. It's the fact that I allowed them to do it to me because I chose. Because, hey, there was one time where I was really at a lost place in my life. And there was a really low point in my life where I was lost. I had no friends. I just wanted to be around somebody. And someone came into my life and I just wanted to have them. And we've all had that experience where we just want somebody in our life. It doesn't matter how they are, how they treat us, and I get it. And so I looked at it and I felt, and I let this person do whatever they wanted, and it was a horrible relationship, not only on a friendship level, but on a romantic relationship, because I allowed that. The person didn't do anything to me. At first, I was like, wow, here's another person that's just mean and nasty, but I did that to myself. And so a lot of the things in depression that we have to make peace on is the fact that we did it to ourselves. And I know that's hard for us. It really is. And that's where the guilt comes in, because the guilt is like, we know we did this to ourselves. We know that we allowed this to happen, but because of our insecurities, that we wanted that relationship, that we wanted that friendship because we'd rather be with somebody than be alone, or we wanted that type of idea. We wanted that job, so we allowed our bosses to abuse us or overwork us or underpay us. We do it to ourselves. And that's the hardest thing to overcome, because I'm telling you, when I look at it and I say, well, hey, you know what? I used to get beat up every single day from basically fourth grade on all the way to my senior year in high school by my neighbors, my neighbor friend, and all that stuff. It was hard for me to accept that I was doing it to myself. Well, what do you mean? Because I kept being friends with him. Even though we would fight and then we'd stop talking for a while, then chaos would happen, then we'd make up and be friends again and go fishing, then he'd shoot me in the face with a pellet gun or hit me in the head with something, and then we'd fight again. And I mean, I allowed this to happen because for some reason, something inside of me kept forgiving him, kept not allowing, but it made me who I am today. It made me understand people. And so I'm grateful for that. Even though it was years of everyday constant abuse and constantly our windows being shot out at the house, eggs, spray painting on our house, things being destroyed, coming home and chlorine and our things dumped in the pool and being totally trashed year after year after year. I'm thankful for that. I could blame him and be all depressed and say, oh man, I'm a helpless victim. But no, I took responsibility and I said, you know what? I allowed this to happen because I kept allowing his habits, his traits to pass. And haven't we all done that in those type of ideas? We don't want to accept life for what it really is and people for who they really are. All right, guys, we'll be right back after these messages from I Am Evolution.
The human experience is changing, and consciousness is evolving into something higher than any of us could ever imagine. As we transform into more sentient beings, a new world of connected consciousness is taking place. Welcome to I Am Evolution, the movement in human development that transforms the human experience into a deeper consciousness through perspective and duality. Are you ready to be a part of the next stage in human evolution? Call I Am Evolution today to schedule your appointment at 561-318-0006. That's 561-318-0006. Or email us at iamevolution@protonmail.com.
All right, everybody, I hit the wrong button. You know how it goes. You know I never get every show right, and that's okay. So, all right, guys, we are back with the last part of the struggle of depression. And if you guys have any more questions, please feel free to ask. I'm here for you guys. But, you know, depression is something we all go through. It really is. And whether it's being bullied, trauma in our past, being abused sexually, that's another hard thing for a lot of people to get through. And that's on a whole different level. I'm not really going to go too much into that today because I know that triggers a lot of people, and that takes a lot of working through ideas. I get it. Some of these ideas are harder to work through, and I'm not saying that in 2 months or 3 months it's magically gonna, be cured in your life. But if you work through it and you're persistent in your thing in your life, and you start accepting the things that cannot be changed, and you start working towards it, and that you can learn to make peace with it. And changing old habits is hard. It really is. We are creatures of habits, and when we look in our life and we say, oh, well, I mean, how many of us, let's do, how many of us don't like the way we look? I gained a lot of weight this year. I've never in my life been this heavy. And you know what? I had a hard time with it a little bit, because the fact that I love to exercise, I love to, and it's not the fact that I don't love myself. It's just that I know how much harder it's going to be. But at the same time, it gives me a goal to work on. When I finally get healthy, hey man, I'm going to have a lot of gym time, a lot of exercise, a lot of working towards my goal. And how great is that going to feel? So yes, I can be depressed about that, but how many people, we don't like the way we look, we don't like the way things that have happened, we don't like what's going on in our life, we don't like our jobs. There are so many things that we get depressed about. And I know that a lot of people, when I was talking to a lot of people, that's one of the things that they said, is that, Miss Raina, I just don't like the way I look. I just don't like my weight. I don't like my health. But again, we have to look at it, what we're doing to it, because no one's grabbing our hand and forcing us to McDonald's or Burger King. No one's grabbing our hand and forcing us to smoke. If they are, well, hey, we better get some new friends over there, because that's not healthy. But at the same time, we have to look at this, because when we look at habits and we look at ourselves, we are creatures of habits. And depression, our brain works in patterns. It works in that idea, and it works in habits. That's what we call a habit, is when our neural pathways fire over and over, it becomes adaptable. It starts saying, hey, this is the easiest path with least resistance, so this is what we're going to do every time. That's why we give into, we say, hey, I'm going to quit smoking. And all of a sudden we start for a few days, and then we go, oh, you know what, I'm just going to try it this once. And next thing we know, 3 days later, we're back to smoking like a chimney. Or we say, hey, we're going to lose weight. I'm going to go out. I'm going to eat healthy. We buy all this healthy stuff. We eat for 1 or 2 days, and the next thing we know, bam, we're back to eating our garbage. We're back to eating our stuff. I get it. Trust me. Caleb and I were talking about that the other day. We've been snacking lately when we get together on our Saturdays on these vegan chocolate muffins from Whole Foods, which are really good, and I don't want to tempt anybody. But I was like, all right, Caleb, no more, because I'm gaining weight just sitting here doing nothing. And so now I have to make a conscious choice. Well, I have to accept the fact that, hey, this is who I am. And if I'm going to give into it, I already know that I'm not exercising. I know that all the muscle I had is now turning to fat, because that's what muscle does. It loses its thing. You start to gain weight, everything like that. And hey, and so if I'm contributing to it, how would my depression, I would get right back into it, right? I would get right back into a depressive state if I'm contributing to it. And then I would be depressed and saying, oh, you know what, I've gained this weight. I don't like the way I look. Well, I'm contributing to it. I'm purposely contributing to it. So what I've decided to do again is go back to meal prepping, go back to all these things. And it's hard to stick with it, because especially when you're not feeling good, and I get it, most people who have weight, most people who don't, usually have health problems are going with it. And trust me, right now, I don't feel well. And so it's easy for me to want to go to maybe Subway or Publix or something and just do the quick thing, because when you're not feeling well and you're not feeling healthy about yourself, you're depressed, it's easy just to call somebody or delivery service and order something quick. But the trick around that is, and what I've learned to do that, is doing it on the days that you're healthy. And that's why meal prepping, juicing, pre-juicing, all this stuff is very healthy and will get you back out of that. Because remember, depression is not only something often psychological, but it's the way you feel as well. And so when you eat healthy and you're taking care of yourself, it changes the energy. We had a show on vibration and how food has certain vibration frequencies that tell you where they're at, and depending on what you eat is going to lower or raise your vibration. If say like me and Caleb go to Whole Foods and we buy a bunch of junk and we pig out, well, hey, yeah, it satisfied that mood that I was in, but then after that I'm going to be like, oh, I just don't feel well. I just, I shouldn't have ate that, because that's lowering the vibration. And so no matter what it is, whether it's our health, no matter, especially when it comes to our health, we have to look at what we're doing to ourselves to be able to create that idea of those triggers and what we're doing that's causing the depression. When we're going through this idea that, hey, you know what, I'm in depression, I don't know how to get out of it, everything seems to be the end of the world, it just seems like life sucks, the world sucks, people sucks, that's the surefire sign that we need to be able to surround ourselves with people that are supportive. When we look at this, and it's hard, because when I used to be depressed, I used to sit there and say, you know what, I don't want to be around anybody. I don't want, people annoyed me at the time. And it was really, really hard. It was really hard for me to be able to bring myself to that. That's why you have to set something up to an idea where you pull yourself out through your friends. And so I made sure, like Stacy, and now Denise will be part of that. I made sure, like Leanne and Caleb and stuff like that. Like when I used to get depressed, I used to call them, even if I didn't tell them I was depressed. And I would start joking around with them. And I'd start saying, hey, let's get together. Let's do this. Because just being out and being able to section myself from my problems, section myself from my moods, we're able to do that. When we dwell on our past, it's because those pathways, those old habits are reminding ourselves. They're saying, hey, well, right now I'm alone. I have no friends. I have nothing. I'm not doing this. I'm not enjoying what I'm doing. If we're not enjoying what we're doing, it's because we're expecting something else to be different, or we're expecting external gratification. And I think that's one of the hardest things we have to do. When I was doing these interviews and I was talking to people and saying, well, you know what, my family does this to me, and my family, and I try to get some peace and quiet and all this stuff. Well, we're sabotaging. We're creating this idea that people are doing things to us. And when we have this idea that people are doing things to us, we start to understand that we start to play in that victim mode. And so what I do is I surround myself by people that I know that aren't going to do anything to us. It's very healthy for you if you live in a family and maybe there's many people in your house, maybe there's a couple, have friends, have an escape route. Don't always be a homebody. I love being home. I love my house. It's my little pad. It's my little place to get away from the world. But you have to get out. You have to be able to be in there and or get out and have friends and go out and do stuff. Being active and in nature is one of the most healing things. And that sounds so new agey. It sounds so cliche, but I don't know how many times I've been seriously depressed and felt like I was ready to commit suicide again, or at least attempt suicide. And the next thing I know is I said, you know what, let's go out in the water. Let's go to the ocean. And I just allowed myself to be out, and I allowed myself to cry. I allowed those emotions to get out. I allowed myself to exercise. And even when I was younger, especially in the New England area, when I used to go through really bad bouts of depression, sometimes I'd run out my house, or I'd drive to a certain place, and then I'd run as hard as I can, and I'd feel all that anger, all that depression, everything, and I'd be saying it as I'm running up a hill, until the point literally I fall to the ground and I can't run anymore. And I just used to breathe and just be like out of breath, and I couldn't get up for 15-20 minutes because I ran so hard. I exuded all that energy. That's one of the hardest things for us to do. So I want to add, because I know we only have a few minutes left. I want to ask ourselves, what do you do for your depression? What is it? If you have an idea what's causing it, what do you do for it? If you don't do anything for it, then obviously this idea of depression is going to stay with you. If you don't have a plan, if you don't have anything that's going to create this helping you through this depression, then you're going to be stuck with it. One of the biggest things that always I hear from everybody that deals with depression, anger, anything, is they don't do anything for it. You know, there's many reasons to be depressed if you look at the world. If you want to look at the world in that perception, you could say, well, there's racial injustice. There's the way people take care of the earth. People hate to hate. There's finances. There's working all the time. There's so many reasons why people become depressed. But if we are going to keep sticking our finger into the light socket and wondering why we're getting shocked, does that really surprise you? And so now it's our time to start taking responsibility, because when I was talking to a lot of people and I was interviewing them and I was saying, hey, and I would kind of throw questions at them to see if they really wanted to do anything about it. I found that 9 out of 10 people that and this is not just recently, this is in the past too. I found about 8 to 9 out of 10 people really don't do anything and don't want to do anything for their depression or their anger or their bipolar or anything that they're suffering with. Why would you do that? Why do people who don't like to be suffering suffer themselves? Because they see themselves in a no-win situation. They see themselves and these issues as they can't be changed. But the fact of the matter is they can change. You can change them. You have the capability for you to be able to change it. If you don't like your work, it's okay to find another job. You will find something that you enjoy. If you don't like having certain family members live with you, it's okay. You don't have to have that responsibility. If you don't like the person you're with, dating, friends, whatever, if those friends aren't being the friends that you want, it's okay to let them go. You don't have to be in this situation, but you're going to be in this situation as long as you refuse to take responsibility and see yourself as these situations can't be fixed. True, there's always going to be things like racial injustice for a long time, homophobia. There's going to be things we can't control. Viruses are going to happen. Wars are going to happen. Things are going to happen in this life because life is meant to happen like this. Life is going exactly according to plan, even you. But until you learn to evolve into a being that changes their perception from focusing on, hey, these are problems that I can't fix, to saying, hey, you know what? I do have the responsibility to change these things that I want, because, hey, a lot of stuff has gone in this world this past year. None of it affected me. Not one cent. I'm happier today. I had a bad heart. I collapsed on a football field. I've been dealing with major health issues. And I'm happier today that I gained weight. I'm happier today than ever. COVID didn't bother me. Collapsing on a football field, not being able to play sports for a while doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me because I don't see myself as a no-win situation. I see myself as someone who's responsible. I see myself as someone who's willing to put themselves in the situation and you know what? And be able to take care of that. Seek people that can help you. Seek people that you feel comfortable. If you don't feel comfortable seeking a therapist right now, that's okay. Start to talk to friends. Hey, there's millions of shows. There's this show that you're listening to. There's other shows that talk about things that are going on. There's therapists that do podcasts and everything. There's a lot of shows out there that can help you so you can get comfortable. And that's the reason why I do this show. I do this weekly show every week because I want people that can't afford it, that can't afford help, or don't feel comfortable going to help, at least being able to have some sort of outlet. And that's what these shows do. And there's a lot of people that are willing to do that. And hey, this costs money. I never asked for donations. This costs a lot of money to run. But because of that idea, we try to help those to get to that point. So All right, guys, I realize that it's almost out of my time. I'm on rambling. Yeah, that's the way it's going to go. So, all right, guys, follow us on our Facebook at facebook.com/Transcendental Transformation. YouTube is Transcendental Transformation Radio Show. Visit our website, soulandspiritguide.com, and sign up for our newsletter to receive hidden shows and special VIP access to the website and guest offers. And again, if you really enjoyed the show, please share it. Please share it with somebody that could benefit from it. The only way we're going to grow and help others is by your help as well. So please share it if you can. And always remember to believe in yourself, and it's not our abilities or our talents that make us who we are, but it is our choices. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.